Well, hey there, folks. It's that time of the week again, and that, of course, is time for Jungle Drums. Now, just in case you're watching or you've watched PC Building Fundamentals, yes, I am wearing the same T-shirt I am in that video, and that's because I'm recording this on the same day I recorded that. So, no, it's not a case of the washing machine's broke or I'm just plain old dirty. It's nothing like that at all. I just decided, well, I'm not going to change my shirt just for the sake of it. But anyway, aside from my own personal hygiene and wardrobe choice, I am joined by a very good friend and special guest this week, and that, of course, is Jacob McCourt.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm wearing a freshly laundered shirt.
Oh, see, now you're just showing off. You're just showing off. Anyway, hey, look, Jacob, if you've obviously visited the site scholargamers.com, you will know that Jacob has wrote several articles. He's reviewed quite a few games. Definitely one of, our top-notch contributors at the site. But, hey, you guys don't know him. You don't know him like I know him. So Jacob, why don't you just, tell us a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind, good sir.
So I'll give you the Coles Notes version, and for anyone in North America, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Do they have Coles Notes in Europe?
I don't think so. When I was in high school in America, it was Cliff Notes back then.
Okay, same idea. But I'll give you the short version. So I am Canadian. I contribute to the site. Both reviews and written features. Apart from my work on Scholarly Gamers, I do contribute as well to Best Buy Canada's blog. I review speakers and home theater hardware and how-tos and do how-tos for them, as well as host and produce the Left Behind Game Club, which is a podcast on the internet.
See, you got me there with the whole audiophile thing, because that's my roots right there. Like, when I was a teenager, I built, before I had a home stereo, I built a car stereo in my bedroom. So I built my own sub box and all that kind of stuff. And for years as a youngster, that's what I did. I used to help people with their car stereos.
Wow.
I was, and this is no bullshit, I was on the cusp, because I wasn't 18 yet, I was only 17, I was on the cusp of a sponsorship with Rockford Fosgate.
No way!
Yes, because of my car. I had a 1990 Mustang 5.0, white, blood red interior. It was all set up. I only had two 12s in the back, but those two 12s, because I had a sealed box, it was all custom done, using the spare tire recess and whatnot. The amps were beautifully recessed as well. It was in my home city down in Louisiana. The car was known, but then I also spent about 10 grand on engine and performance upgrades as well, so it was fast. So fast that I eventually totaled it, and so hence why the sponsorship never went through. But that's what happens when, you're talking, this was 96, 97, way before the Fast and the Furious. Yeah, we were street racing back then.
Before it was cool.
Before it was cool. We were doing it. But no, so I've always enjoyed high quality audio. I've always, I used to always have surround sound setups for my PCs, and we've always had, a good living room theater, and it's the same when it comes to headphones. I love high quality audio. So that really warms my heart to know that.
So I need to ask you then, what kind of headphones, or what kind of cans, as we call them in the business, what kind of headphones are you wearing today?
Well, the ones I'm wearing today are okay. But the ones I'll be wearing in a few weeks, though, at the minute, I'm actually wearing a pair of Razer Adaros, which are just headphones. They're not a headset. And so they're from their DJ kind of line. And frankly, they're quite good. They're not bad. They're by no means, in the same, kind of level as a lot of other brands. But I do have, hopefully shipping out soon, an actual gaming headset from Odyssey. And that's the Mobius. And Odyssey is just, those are the guys that make the friggin' $4,000, what they call the LCD 4s. They're the proper monitors, where there's, people wear, celebrities wear Beats by Dr. Dre for the sponsorship money, but when they go in the studio, they put on a pair of Odysseys. So I'm really, really stoked. It had been on Indiegogo. So the normal price is $400 US, but for the early adopters, by funding the campaign, you could get them for as low as $200.
Oh my god!
Even cheaper. So I think in my currency, when it came out to all of the conversions and stuff, I think I ended up paying about just over £200. And to put this,
That's cheap.
To put this in a perspective for you, Jacob, a pair of Astros, like the A50s,
Yep.
over here, £280. So I got a pair, these Odysseys for cheaper than Astros, and I cannot wait, because they've got the this strange. I mean, if you hook them up via USB, basically they've got this new type of positional audio, where sure enough, like if you move your head, it'll really dynamically change. They look awesome. I'll send you a link for them. They look so good. But so we're just waiting for them to actually be built and shipped over, and then yes, my ears will basically be having orgasms every time I'm listening to something. They've got built-in Bluetooth. You can use it. It's got a mic, even so I won't really use that, but that is going to be a hardware review for the site, for sure. And I'll probably do a video unboxing of them as well.
Well, I look forward to reading it and watching your video review, because I'm sure, like many high-end headphones, the packaging will just be beautiful as well.
I just hope so. I hope so. But no, sorry, I had to interrupt there because a fellow audiophile. Yay!
Yeah, and today I'm only wearing a pair of Sennheiser SR 598s.
Wow. You don't want to get the good stuff out for this. I understand that.
You know what? I gotta earn it. Someday I'm gonna get to that point. But these Sennheisers, I did treat myself, because they aren't entry-level headphones. I would say they're nice mid-level headphones. So I did treat myself to them a little while ago. For a long time, I was wearing Sennheiser 202s, HD 202s, which are like they're like a $35 Canadian headphone. They're very functional. You can throw them in a bag and they won't break. And the sound quality is perfectly acceptable. So when I graduated from my recent college program, I treated myself to these headphones, and I believe I got them for half price, but that's still like in the $100, between $100 and $200. But someday I aspire to have a pair of headphones like those. So I'm looking forward to hearing you talk about those at length.
It's just, the thing is, prior to that headset coming out, their cheapest headphones, which I think were like some little earbuds, were around $600 or $700. Whereas their proper over-ear headphones, I'm sure the cheapest ones were about $1,800, with their top-of-the-line ones being anywhere between $4,000 and $6,000. And so the whole concept of this gaming headset, the drivers in it use the same planar technology as what's in those high-end ones. I can't wait. It's just... That's why it was a while back I was tweeting out about saying, look, I know it's a lot of money, but honestly, this is a steal to get this quality for this price. It's just, it's stupid. Even at the MSRP, because you can order them from their website now, I think, and it's, $3.99. Even at that price, if they deliver what it's supposed to, what they claim it to do, it's still a deal of a lifetime. But yeah, no, I look forward to it. But yeah, Left Behind Game Club, before I so rudely interrupted you. Let me just bring it up here on my screen real quick. So folks, if you're out there, leftbehindgame.club. In fact, you just go ahead and talk us through Left Behind Game Club. How did this all start?
Sure. So we just actually celebrated our first year anniversary earlier, late June. And what me and two friends, so they're two friends, they're colleagues that I had in university back when I graduated university many years ago. And we all have a love of games. But what we saw was, with a lot of either subreddits or there are a lot of communities popping up of people that don't necessarily play the newest release. They love video games, but they get to a point in their lives, and whether it's because of time constraints or money constraints, they don't play the newest thing when it comes out. So one of the best parts about playing a new release is that you can join the conversation and talk about a brand new game. So for example, for the first time in a long time, I bought a new game. I bought Mario Tennis Aces, so I'm able to join in the conversation. But usually I play a game a year, 2 years, 3 years after it comes out, and I'm like, great, I'm going to go through all of these old forum posts and stalk around and try and find great conversations about these games that I can read, not necessarily engage with. So what we ended up doing is in our charter is just saying, let's play the games that are 18 months older and longer, and just talk about them as friends. So, there are a lot of podcasts that tend to do this, and there are a lot of really good kind of, I want to call them like video game club or book club for game podcasts out there, and some of them are phenomenal. But we just kind of wanted to take it and kind of create a community, but also talk about it at a very kind of kind of at the entry level. So, you can engage, we can tell stories about the games as we're playing them. We can kind of give you the brief on the history of the game developer, or give you the history of, we're playing Hitman from 2016 right now. And we kind of went through IO Interactive and the strife that they had. So it's just a way to bring back and create a community of people playing a game that's a little bit older, a long time after the fact. So we've been doing it now for about 13 months, and I think we just hit episode 37, and we're just having a great time. We've got a Discord community, people are engaging with us, we're engaging with them. I'm having a heck of a lot of fun with it. Had a lot of guests on, so maybe you'll be one of them in the future. Who knows?
Oh my, yeah, no.
I should have probably asked you before I said that, but
it's just it's time zones. I mean, that's like where with Jungle Drums, where I've always wanted to try to get folk on, and it was just in the past. I mean, I used to record this live because I was streaming it at the time, and so it just made it a really awkward time for friends in North America. But now that I've switched this format where I'm just recording it, it's definitely an option. But no, I mean, yeah, I don't like most of the podcasts I tend to subscribe to, which I don't really subscribe to many these days. It's usually just kind of music and whatnot. I don't. Most of the time, if I'm sitting at a computer, I'm listening to other music or something, or likewise, if I'm in the car, I'm listening to radio. It's only, and I hate to say it, it's when I'm up in the bathtub or something, put on a little Bluetooth speaker that's in the bathroom and slap on some music or whatnot. And so when I came across Left Behind Game Club, I was like, oh wow, this sounds like a pretty cool concept. And one of the episode that actually really grabbed me in was, of course, the one about Vanquish. Because, great game. In fact, you can't see this, but you'll see it in the video. I've got my Vanquish box, my Xbox 360 disc and box here, because I bought that game when it first came out. Because it was fantastic. It was so overlooked and underhyped, and it's just it's fantastic. And
it's a story that I tell in the podcast, but about Vanquish specifically, and you've already heard this, but I went into the equivalent of GameStop in Canada, which is EB Games, and the attendant came up to me and said, "Hey, is there anything I can help you with?" Like, he was maybe 10 years my junior, and I basically said, "Oh, I'm just looking," because I was literally just killing time. And he walked up to me and he's like, "What are you playing right now?" So I kind of went into my pitch mode where I put on that Left Behind Game Club voice, not by it was totally by accident, but I'm like, right now I'm playing a game called Vanquish. It came out at this time, developed by these people, and kind of gave him the 30-second pitch on it. Came from Platinum Games, published by Sega, had an aesthetic, rocket legs, you get to slide around, shooting great. And he's like, I never heard about that game. Where can I get it? I'm like, well, you can play it now on Xbox One because it's backwards compatible. You should go do that because it's probably $10. And I sold another copy there. So my love for Vanquish goes deep. Yeah. It is a game that it passed way too many people over. And if you have the chance and you're hearing this, listen to the podcast, great, but play Vanquish. That is a heck of a game.
Yeah. I mean, it just is. It was fantastic. But no, that was the episode that really kind of sucked me in, so to speak. So, oh right, I got to see what these guys are saying about it. And then just listening to the podcast, I mean, you guys do have a great recipe there. You've got this lovely mix, yourself, you bring the energy, excellent amount of knowledge. Then you've got Michael, who's your voice is lovely, but Michael's is just smooth as butter. Come on. That guy, he speaks, and you're just like, oh, you just can't wait for his next word. And then, and even Mo, when Mo pipes in. He's just hilarious most of the time.
He's just usually the comic relief. We have a very good dynamic of, I'm kind of the everyman, just kind of keep the show going. Mike brings the knowledge, and like you said, every single word that you hang off is every single word, because he brings the knowledge, he brings the expertise, and he just knows how to turn a phrase. And then Mo's great because he's the everyman as far as games go, and this is self-admitted. He'll say, like, I don't play everything, I don't have this long lineage of being a quote-unquote gamer. And I think he's quite the comedian as well. So there's just a really nice there's a good chemistry between us. And when we have guests on, usually their chemistry works pretty well too. And as a final point on the show itself, I think one of the things that I'm very proud of when we look back at the show and say, hey, we did a thing, we put out episodes. But one of the things that we wanted to stick to in our kind of quote unquote charter was that we wanted to stick to episodes that were around an hour, because a lot of what we found, and a lot of the podcasts that I even listen to on the gaming side are 2-hour podcasts, are 3-hour podcasts. And I don't know about you, but I don't necessarily have the time and desire to listen to a 3-hour gaming podcast, because I'd rather listen to a 1-hour gaming podcast and then listen to like a 1-hour, NPR show or news show, and then maybe an hour of something that's more oddball. So that's one of the things that we stuck to, is like, we want to be around an hour so that people can kind of get what they want out of it. We don't go deep like some of the other, book club podcasts, and that's kind of not our way, but I think we go deep enough where you either say, hey, I want to find out more about this game, let's go and dig up forums or join the Discord and find out more, or you go, hey, I want to grab more of these episodes because they're bite-sized and it's great.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think an hour's about the sweet spot when it comes to that type of podcast, or a video cast, a tube cast, because as you say, it's a nice kind of bit of time where you can get plenty of stuff in, but then it also fits in really well with, say, the average commute for some people, whether that's on a train, especially like here in the UK, for example. Like if you live or work in London but live out with, or any other city, you're generally an hour commute. Or likewise, someone's lunch break where they can just pop something on for an hour. There'd be nothing worse than only having an hour of the day to only get halfway through a podcast. You'd be like, oh, God damn it. But yeah, I think you're right that an hour length is just that sweet spot.
My commute's 40 minutes every day. So, 40 minutes there, 40 minutes back. So like I said, if I have, because I'm a podcast snob, I guess, if I have the fast forward on and I have a show at, 1.3 times or 1.4 times, skip the commercials, an hour is perfect for me. So that's where I'm at as far as podcasts go. I stuck my nose up, as I said, 1.3 times, but there you go.
Well, there you go, folks. So, Left Behind Game Club, right? Again, check out the website, leftbehindgame.club. There you can get all the details. Follow them on social media. You can follow the Left Behind Game Club account itself. Then, of course, all the co-hosts, they all have Twitter and Instagrams and all those types of things. And don't forget about their Discord server. I'm going to have to join your Discord server just to get in on some of these conversations. Just to actually, I want to see if Mike's typing is silky smooth as his voice.
Spoiler alert, it totally is.
Oh, anywho, right, so why don't we get cracking in on some news? So, our first item of news this evening is from TechCrunch, www.techcrunch.com. And now this is something which, what episode was it? I don't think it was last week, but maybe the week before. This was something that I had actually discussed very briefly, not specifically from Xbox, but that some of the industry insiders have been alluding to the possibility that the next generation of consoles could be the last conventional console. And, we could be looking at moving towards more of the stream machines. And so this article is quite funny because, again, that was weeks ago I mentioned this. But now it turns out that Microsoft is indeed building a low-cost streaming-only Xbox. Not as a replacement. They're going to be doing another next-gen Xbox as well. But they are going to be building this cloud gaming system that most people at the minute are calling it Xbox Scarlet. The system itself is codenamed Scarlet Cloud. And of course, it's going to be reliant on Microsoft's Azure cloud platform and whatnot. And it's quite interesting. I mean, what's your take on this, Jacob, when it comes to... I mean, I've covered quite a bit of news in the past about these streaming systems for like PC users, where, you know, say you don't have the money to build an all singing, all dancing, just amazing gaming machine. You know, dual 1080 Ti's and SLI. You know, so you've spent $2,000 just on your video cards. You know, they've got these cloud systems where for a subscription fee, you have access to a system like that. And as long as you have decent internet, you could be playing games from like your crappy little, well, not yours, I'm not saying what you have is crappy, but, you know, like a Chromebook, and you'd be able to play AAA games, you know, at crazy FPS from your Chromebook because it's using this cloud computing solution.
I guess what I'll start with is just Microsoft, and I don't mean to fan the console wars, but I'm gonna make a statement that may have me labeled in a certain way. But I think that Microsoft continues to make the best investments for their platform long term. I think Phil Spencer is arguably one of the smartest people in the games business, and having him be elevated, so he was elevated to report directly to the CEO of Microsoft, I want to say about a year ago. And what that lets him do is gets him access to more capital, to the ability to kind of shift the business more dramatically if need be. And from what I've seen over the past, even, you know, since E3, some of the moves that they've made and continue to make, think about the things that they have on their platform now. So you think about Xbox Game Pass, you think about, you know, EA Access, which is not a Microsoft, you know, software as a service, but it is on their platform exclusively. You think about Xbox Live, Games with Gold. I could go on and on and on about the very and at E3 how they purchased 5 new first-party studios. They continuously make the best investments for the long term because you know, we can talk about the numbers. I don't want to do that, but they have lost this generation. The numbers will very easily say that. And the moves that they're making now are the moves that will cement them as the number one player in the next generation. And for me, this you know, I call it second SKU, is one of the things I think that will separate them from the pack. Because if you look at what Sony has, so Sony purchased both OnLive and Gaikai when both of those businesses failed, and really those businesses were just ahead of their time, right? And Indeed. And they, you know, Sony has those patents in their portfolio. They are perfectly able. They have PlayStation Now right now. They're probably thinking about, you know, are we going to have 2 SKUs? Are we going to have a streaming only box? What are we going to do? But to me, if anyone was going to do it, and I'm not saying Sony's not going to do it, but Xbox doing it does not surprise me in the least, especially with the Azure platform that they're kind of building and have built already.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing. I mean, cloud computing is amazing. I mean, we had did in the last 2 years at school did a fair bit. Well, say a fair bit. We had modules on it and stuff, and it was one of those aspects that, you know, like I've always been relatively well versed when it comes to hardware, and then even like, you know, simple networking and whatnot. But the whole, when you get into the complexities of virtualization and how cloud computing works, I mean, it's amazing. You know, I mean, that's why Amazon, you know, they had their whole Amazon Web Services was just for them, for their storefront, until they started to get contacted by other organizations and companies saying, wow, you know, your systems are great. Have you ever thought of, you know, selling them? What do you mean? Yes, you know, and so now Amazon, yes, we all know them as the retailer, but Amazon Web Services is where most of their money comes from.
AWS runs the web, right?
You know, I mean, whether it's offering software as a service, platform as a service, you know, there's all these different tiers. And it's absolutely amazing. And that's why, I mean, in this day and age, you know, everything has moved to cloud subscriptions. When you look at software, you know, Adobe Premiere, you know, you can no longer just go buy it. You have to subscribe to it. Look at Microsoft Office. You know, everything's going as a subscription-based model. In the computing world, when it comes to software, So it doesn't surprise me at all that gaming could very well go that way. And I think the thing that I really like about that is if you imagine, I mean, as you know yourself, like to stream something like Windows 10, right? I mean, as long as both devices have Windows 10, it doesn't matter what the hardware's like. Obviously, the hardware that's running the game, you know, as long as that's in top-notch condition, the streaming experience on the receiver, you know, the portable one, is going to be fine. I mean, that's like, I've got an old, a little Windows 10 tablet, and so I can play my Xbox remotely from that, and likewise I can use Steam Link with it, and it works really, really well. And the beauty of it is, that'll continue to work that way. No matter what I do to my computer, if I upgrade it, make it quicker, make it faster, my remote device never needs to change. And I think that's what gets me about this Xbox Scarlet or Scarlet Cloud, you know, Project Scarlet, whatever you want to call it, is the possibility that if they fully embrace cloud gaming, it could be the last Xbox you would ever need, because they don't need to change that hardware. Because think about it, they do all the upgrades on the server side, on the cloud computing side. So as long as you've got this one device, you know, hypothetically, it would always be up to date. They would only need to just, you know, maybe give you firmware updates and whatnot. So as a concept, I really, really like it.
And anyone that spends any time kind of reading, looking around at forums, they can kind of gather that that's the way Xbox is moving their platform. I mean, if they're spending the time and money to make sure that Xbox 360 games are backwards compatible, and then they're spending even more money on a you know, taking their OG Xbox games, which were built on PowerPC, and making those games compatible on the Xbox One, which I'm sure is no simple engineering feat. If they're making the investments, you can go, Microsoft is probably moving to Xbox as a platform instead of, you know, as you've stated, making it device agnostic, where it doesn't matter if you have a Roku stick style device in your TV, or if you have a larger box, where you're going to be able to play the same Xbox games on your TV. So anyone that spends any time reading knows that that's kind of where Xbox is moving their business. And there, of course, will be hurdles. I mean, think about it in countries that are less developed, or even within a country like myself. So in Canada, we have a huge country where in some parts of the country, especially when you go kind of in the territories up north, internet access is not fast, is not cheap. And especially, you know, you're in the you know, if you think of someone who was in the military before, they, you know, they would have spent money. If someone was in the military before, they may be in a very isolated area and, you know, have to get an update on disk, for example, right? Yeah. And even in the US, with net neutrality coming in and having hard data caps, and having your speed throttled, there are so many obstacles that make a, you know, pure streaming future in the near term difficult. But I mean, that doesn't mean that they can't give you both. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, like you say, that's where, you know, these types of services, yeah, the upload download speeds are important. Then of course also the actual latency, how many hops, you know, there are going to be between you and that actual device. Because we've got similar situations over here where you go into, you know, some of the major cities. I mean, just last week down in Milton Keynes, they introduced gigabit internet, right? You know, actual gigabit to someone's door. And on the flip side of that, we could go to a rural area, like up here in Scotland, where your upload speed would be capped at 0.8. Oh my god!
I had actually, one of my places up here, I'd had what I thought was a decent internet package. And at the time I was just kind of, you know, console gaming and whatever, and I was playing World of Tanks a lot at the time, but I kept having disconnection issues, like, what the hell's going on? What the hell's going on? And sure enough, my upload speed wasn't even 1. It was, it's one of these things over here. Not many people need a high upload speed. So it's the same when we got fiber in this house. The download, which unfortunately, because we're like in a small town, our download is basically the fastest that they can do is 80, right? If we were in a city, yeah, I could get 100, 150, 200. But because we're kind of out near, down near the coast, actually, you know, just from one of the the ports going over to Ireland. That was kind of the download cap, so to speak. But then I found out that the upload speed was shocking. I was like, oh crap. And at the time, I'm streaming, I'm trying to upload stuff to YouTube. It's taking all day. I'm like, this isn't going to work. And we had to phone up and say, look, we need more upload. Like, why? What do you mean? And so we explained that I was kind of creating content. And he's like, oh, okay, yeah, no, that's fine. And, they didn't even have a package for that. We just had to specifically request it. And then they kind of figured out, okay, that's going to cost you this much. But upload speeds is where a lot of folk end up getting hit really, really badly. And unfortunately, with these types of streaming services, upload's important because that's where, you're inputting your commands. It needs to make this connection. And if you've got a low upload, it also means that latency is most likely going to be an issue as well. So like you say, I mean, great technology, but yes, for those who live in the areas that have the infrastructure to support it.
I live outside of a major city, and I just was on 10 and 2 or 10 down, 2 up until 6 months ago. The local provider, the Canadian, and it's kind of one of the things that drives me crazy is the Canadian telecom system is doesn't have a lot of competition. So really there's only 3 or 4 players. And if you're trying to bring in money from other countries into the Canadian infrastructure on telecom, it's very restrictive. So, there aren't a lot of competitors. There's really only 2 or 3 guys that had the lion's share of the internet business in this country. So I just went with a local provider now that gave me 50 up, 50 down. But I'm sure in the country outside of major cities, I'm in the minority. As a final point that I want to make on this, I just thought about a world where, do you remember the Xbox 360 and how they had an Xbox 360 core and how they had an Xbox 360, not Elite, but it was your core and your regular Xbox 360?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
indeed. I totally can imagine a world where, console manufacturers now don't make money off systems. They make negative dollars on selling you a piece of hardware. Accessory sales, they make money, but I'm sure margins are very slim. They make their money from every unit of games that are sold, from their console holder fees, and then they also make tons of money hand over fist on services. So really, they're trying to sell you services, and the box doesn't really matter. So if they can come in at a price point, like if you think about the Xbox One and the PS4, one of them in the US was $399, one was $499. Imagine a world where they could get if they could get to a $199 price point.
Mm-hmm.
Just imagine how powerful that would be in the market if you could say, here's this $199 Apple TV style device where all of your gaming will be done in the cloud, or all of the computing side of the gaming equation will be done in the cloud, and you just plug this box into your TV, and you just get this. You might have to upgrade it, I don't know, every 5 to 7 years, but all the processing is being done on servers, so you don't have to worry about it. Play whatever game you want. That is a very, very compelling story that they can tell and sell a lot of boxes.
Yeah, I mean, and as you're saying, with a subscription fee, they'll make money. Like when Game Pass was first introduced, so many critics of it, were like, oh, that's just stupid. They're going to lose money. People are going to stop buying games. It's going to put, all of these, why would you buy a game if you can just, pay a small subscription fee? And like Sea of Thieves, nobody with any sense went and bought Sea of Thieves. They just subscribed to Games Pass, so they could access it. But then fast forward, and holy crap, no, they made a shit ton of money thanks to Games Pass, because a lot of folk, signed up for it. It's a good.
And not only that, but as a final point, I swear, Phil Spencer sat and did an interview. I believe he did it with Giant Bomb on one of their night streams. And what he had said is that when, Jeff Gerstmann asked him the question of like, how's this affecting, because in those interviews, he's very open with Jeff especially. And he goes, how does that affect your game sales? Doesn't it cause you to sell less copies of the game because people are on Game Pass? And he goes, no, actually, in a lot of cases, people will get Game Pass and then will also purchase the game. So I think that there's a lot of good business happening on the Xbox Game Pass model side that I'm sure they're taking all the way to the bank.
Yeah, No, agreed. But yes, we shall just have to see what happens. Obviously, the next generation of consoles isn't anytime soon. We've got a couple of years before that'll come, surely. But the prospect of a cloud-based streaming system that would, speculation is it'd be considerably cheaper than a normal console. So that would be quite interesting to see. Right, our next bit of news, well, this is big news all over the internet this week, and that, of course, has been the launch of the next update for No Man's Sky. Now, you may not have heard of No Man's Sky. I don't know, maybe you've been in Antarctica for the last couple of years, but in 2016, No Man's Sky was one of the most, anticipated games in a long time. There's articles all over the place, but, hey, I'm just going to go ahead and plug my own. I had even written about it briefly this week on the site, just kind of outlining what the next update was bringing, as well as just putting a little bit of footage in there. But if you haven't read anything about No Man's Sky or don't play it, this update was huge. It's had just a complete graphical overhaul of the game. The introduction of a lot of new systems. It's added in proper multiplayer, which multiplayer was one of the things that critics of the game decried Sean Murray for, because you said it would have multiplayer, which he technically never did. But anyway, that's besides the point. Anyway, fast forward 2 years after No Man's Sky came out, this next update is just amazing. And of course, the next update also marked the day that it was finally released on the Xbox. And so, yeah, it's I was really, really impressed. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about the game because I'm actually going to be reviewing it, so I'll just save all of that stuff for the review. But what about yourself, Jacob? When No Man's Sky came out, had you grabbed it or played any of it, or...?
No, so when No Man's Sky came out, I was very curious, and it's funny. I listen to podcasts like years ago, like today. So I'm actually currently listening to a podcast where it's exactly about when No Man's Sky came out. So it's so convenient that I'm here to talk about it, because they were talking about how there was the controversy. No, there wasn't a controversy. There was just a lot of questions around what is No Man's Sky, after he'd been on Sean Murray had been on Colbert, and he'd been on a lot of, he'd just been talking about the game a lot, but in a kind of ambiguous way. Game came out. What happened? All I have to say about that is, like, if you don't like the game, if it's not what promised, just don't buy it. You don't have to threaten a developer. Anyway, I was curious, heard about the game and heard about the controversy about how it may not have delivered on expectations. So I said, I'm going to wait. You had the Scholarly Gamer himself on, I believe, 3 or 4 episodes ago, and you talked about games that look nothing like themselves years after their release. So I believe you talked ad nauseum about The Division, about Warframe, and then about, you may have alluded to the fact that No Man's Sky may be a game that breaks that breaks the mold of the game's past. The game is really having a moment right now. And, having seen what Sean Murray and the crew went through, having to go through the silence of being threatened, which is really, really awful. And now kind of having that moment where the game may finally meet expectations and a lot of people are playing it, enjoying it for the first time, that actually just makes me really happy. So I have a copy on my desk. It is a sealed copy I got at Best Buy for $9.99 or $9.97 on PS4. It is still sealed, but after I am finished probably playing Hitman, I will probably jump into No Man's Sky because I've got the game, and this huge update is free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What can you say about the game? I know you're reviewing it, but
it's one of these things that, I mean, like you say, as with other games, it always irritates me. Gamers are such a fickle bunch. I mean, when they tend to read into things, speculate, and hype things up without any actual basis for it, without any actual facts, and then they get this ideal, or, this idea of what a game's going to be like in their head, and then if it doesn't deliver, they get pissed off. And what irks me is that so many people miss out on how a game matures. The Division, for example, prime example. Like, Marcus loves this game. I still love this game. And when it first came out, now that was surrounding controversy as well, because what we saw in the previous E3s for the original The Division was amazing. And then the game that was delivered didn't look anything like it. I was like, whoa, where'd the graphics go? I mean, it was still a good-looking game, but not compared to the demo reels at E3. And then what happened was, so many people said, oh, this is crap, or it's not what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be like Destiny, but, you know, in the city of New York. Whereas in all reality, it was a tactical kind of RPG shooter. It wasn't supposed to be played like Call of Duty. If you played it like a dungeon crawler and actually set, you know, your characters up, like one as a healer, ranged DPS and whatnot, the game was awesome. It had issues, but it was still pretty good. But what a lot of people did was they left. They turned their back on it. So all these people just, you know, mass exodus away from the game. And in the meantime, people like Marcus and myself who stayed with it, we saw all the updates as they came, and they were introduced, all the balance changes, all these little, you know, tweaks. And it was an amazing experience to be there firsthand and witness a game evolve. Whereas people now, like, if you were to jump into the Division right now with all the expansions and everything, you'd be like, holy shit, this is an amazing game. Same with, like, the original Destiny. The original Destiny was okay at launch, but by the time you get towards the end of the Taken King, so 2 DLCs and a full-blown expansion later, it was a really good package. And this is what pisses me off with No Man's Sky. This is the 4th update, right? Sean Murray didn't turn his back on No Man's Sky, but a lot of gamers did. And I'll tell you what, the first update was 2 months after release, and it was actually really good. Added a lot of stuff in. Then March of the following year, another big update, which added even more stuff, right? And then finally, in August of last year, the Atlas Rises update, you know, had over 30 hours of new story, had missions, had portals you could transfer. You know, the game has been progressively been getting better and better, but nobody's been paying any attention to that. They didn't care. They turned their back on it. But now with the next update, people are taking the game seriously again. And I get it, because this one is huge. When I first booted it up, I didn't recognize it. Like, honestly, the difference was amazing.
Is that because of the improved graphics? Is that because of the new third-person camera? Like, what was the thing that totally sold it for you?
It's everything. It's all this combination of things where now, and what was quite interesting too is I did a side-by-side. I've got 2 monitors in front of me. So I pulled up the PC version on the left and the Xbox version on the right. Now keep in mind, I am running an Xbox One X, so it is going to be different from the normal base console experience, because what the game will try to do is it'll, in quality mode, it'll render it at 4K and then downsample it down to 1080. So it should look, you know, much better. But anyway, the difference in texture quality and lighting was, you know, amazing. I was surprised how well the console version looked. And in some respects, it actually looked better than the PC version, which blew my mind. Even performance-wise, for sure. And it just made me, you know, look at my poor old computer and go, right, I need to upgrade. But that being said, it's simpler, but yet more complex at the same time. They've put in a lot of new systems, a lot of new interfaces, a lot more kind of signposting, whereas before you were really trying to figure a lot of stuff out on your own. Whereas now, it doesn't just give you everything, but it's at least pointing you in the right direction. So, in my mind, you know, and I don't mind unequivocally saying it right now, is that it's a different game. If this had been what had been launched in 2016, I don't doubt for a minute that it would have been nominated for Game of the Year. It would have had critical acclaim, you know, just amazing success. And it's a shame. Now it's finally in the limelight. You'd look now, you know, on Steam, the reviews, it was all mostly negative. Now it's came up to mixed because of the huge amount of positive reviews that are there now. But it's a completely different game. The only critique I've seen so far, and I'll verify this, I haven't tried it on my base Xbox, the normal one yet, but I have heard that on normal PS4s and normal Xboxes that it seems to, performance isn't great. It's not horrible, but it's not great compared to, like on the PS4 Pro, the Xbox One X, or likewise a high-end PC. But no, definitely, it is what it is. I think the game was misunderstood way back when. It's just a bit of escapism, and the way that it's done, the way that a lot of the aesthetics, they do kind of take hints or nods from some early literary works, by Isaac Asimov, Arthur C. Clarke, and whatnot. It's a lovely package, and it always was a good game, despite the criticism.
And I think even when you go back to when the game first came out, I never think it was a problem with, like you've stated, with the game itself. I think the problem was always around communication.
Yeah.
And I think that a very kind of structured, even if it was a press release that just said, this is what this game is, because until the game came out, even when the game was being showed to press didn't even really get the chance. Like, maybe they played it for 5 hours, they played it for 6 hours, or even less time, they played it for 1 hour. And in that amount of time, they were like, I think I know what this game is, but I'm still not 100% sure what it is. And I think if it's an issue around and look, I'm a armchair quarterback as far as, communicating about what No Man's Sky should have been. But I think at the outset, if they would have communicated and said, hey, this is our plan, because they never communicated that No Man's Sky is going to be a platform, because that's what it's turned into, with the 4 updates that you've actually laid out very well in the article that you posted on Scholarly Gamer. Check it out if you want that information. scholarlygamers.com. Those 4 updates it kind of lays out exactly what happened with the game when it happened. And I think if they would have communicated that, like, hey, this almost is an early access title, bad word, but this is a platform that will change over time, I think that really would have changed people's perception on the game. And maybe instead of being in an uproar and saying, this isn't what I wanted, they would have been like, this isn't what I wanted right now, but maybe in 6 months from now, even 3 months from now, with the Foundation update that they released, it would have been something closer to what they wanted.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point with the communication. I mean, that's why you look at how, like with early access titles, and I was always the same, I thought that was a dirty word. And then there's some developers that have used early access as a really good way to communicate with a community. Say, right, so here we go, look, this is the game right now, but we need your help molding it. When I think of titles like, that one flight sim that I'd reviewed, Frontier Pilot Simulator, that's very, very, very early access. And it's really cool, the folk, they're always looking for feedback, this, that, and this. PC Building Simulator, early access, not because Stu Morton down in England's a money-hungry bastard, but because he wanted it out because he needs players, he needs people to play it. And even the horror survival game Remothered, that was another one that was launched early access on PC. Not fully, I think only about 2/3 of the game, because again, Chris Darrell wanted or needed, that help from the community. And it's like you say, I think if Sean Murray had done the same thing with No Man's Sky, it would have been in a completely different position.
And not even Sean Murray, like that game was, console exclusive on PlayStation. And if I'm remembering correctly, I feel as though Sony kind of left him out to dry, or at least not him personally, but left Hello Games out to dry when the game first came out.
It was a weird one, because it was advertised and hailed as PS4 exclusive. Then it turned out it was coming out on PC, and the backpedaling began with, oh, no, it was just a timed exclusive. And then, of course, later down the line, and now we've got it on Xbox. Total miscommunication, as you say. Speaking of other things that are quite disappointing, or at least...
Segue!
That's how we roll. Is an article here from Eurogamer.net, and this was once again... the sad story, and it always seems to happen in studios over here in the UK, doesn't it? It is crazy. But this was to do with the Onrush dev, Evo, layoffs at Onrush. In fact, do you want to give us the skinny on this one?
Sure. So, Drive Club developer of this game, of Onrush, they were acquired by Codemasters in 2016. And so they put Drive Club up. They were acquired by Codemasters, and this was the first title that they were going to put out under Codemasters, which to me, Codemasters is like the perfect fit for these guys. You know, they put out the F1 games, they put out the Dirt games. Back in the day, they put out the Colin McRae rally games. So I'm like, awesome. This will be a great fit for them. The game comes out, and I would say it's a failure at retail. I believe the article states that it sold 1,000 copies at retail in the UK. So Codemasters just went and shut the studio down, essentially. And their messaging around it, speaking again about communication, it is normal course of business for game teams to evolve as projects launch and move into service and as other new projects start. As such, it isn't appropriate to comment on day-to-day movement of staff changes. No, you shut the studio down. That's not day-to-day, movement of people. The studio is gone. And not only that, how long did they have to actually support the game? Look, the post-release content is coming out, but they didn't even get a chance. The game reviewed fairly well. To me, it's a problem of marketing, not of the actual game itself.
Mm-hmm.
You haven't played Onrush yet, have you?
No, I sure haven't. I'm not finicky, but when it comes to like my racing games, I love Forza and whatnot, and I just when I was young, I loved like all the silly stuff, like Twisted Metal, Destruction Derby, all those types of things. But nowadays, Forza Horizon's like the zaniest or most unconventional racing game that I play these days. Because I'm more into I like the sim aspect. I like tuning the car and setting up the suspension and the gear ratios and whatnot. I'm more into that. So no, and it's a shame because it actually looks pretty cool. It looks like it's quite fun.
Yeah, and for me, I'm someone who kind of on the opposite side of you. Like, I appreciate an arcade racer, so I was a huge fan of the Burnout games when those were a thing.
Those were good. I will give you that. Those were fun. They were fun.
Flat Out as a series was great. I hear good things about Bugbear's game that they're working on PC. Is it called it was called Wreckfest? I've heard good things about Bugbear's new game. This title reviewed, in my opinion, very similarly to MotorStorm and very similarly to Split Second, which, when you think about it, has a very similar trajectory to Split Second, if you remember that one correctly. Do you remember Split Second?
It's ringing a bell. I'm not sure if I necessarily played or not.
So it was a Disney Interactive Studios joint, and I believe it was the first title developed it was published, but it was Black Rock Studios.
Okay.
So they had just been acquired by Disney Interactive. It was their first game. It was a cool take on the arcade racer because it was like kind of a TV show and an arcade racer at once, where the whole thing about the game would be you would trigger these events in the environment that would just on the second lap totally destroy the environment, and on the third lap you'd have to come around and deal with the destruction. But
I do remember that. Yep.
But much like this case, with Black Rock Studios, they had been acquired by Disney, and then from there, I think their last title after putting out Pure was Split Second, and then they were shut down. So very similar trajectory. But all I have to say here is this seems to me I didn't know anything about Onrush until the game had come out, and I'd seen a few people that I follow on Twitter go, "Whoa, this Onrush game is pretty cool." And to me, it's a problem of marketing and not a problem of actual development itself. And to me, it just sucks to see this happen. There's been a lot of studies done and a lot of articles being released about how a career in the games industry is usually short-lived. because people, come in, they're so excited, they work really hard for a few years, they go through tumultuous times, through crunch, through burnout, and then they just leave the business with the knowledge that they've taken and go to a different industry where the working conditions are better and where they can make more money. I just think it sucks, and I really would love to see studios like this. Like, I understand that there's a level of employment and contract work that has to shift and change as you go through the different levels or the different stages of development, but I really love to see a point where we don't just shut studios down, especially after a product they release is received well.
Yeah, it's just like you say, it's a shame. I mean, without not hearing anything about this game until, well, now after the fact of this tragedy, so to speak, it's horrible that the people that put their heart and soul into the game are the ones that end up paying the price rather than corporate for not, as you say, marketing it. I mean, no one's going to buy it if they don't know it's been released. Come on. I mean,
yeah.
You look at, other games that maybe haven't even necessarily done that well, but they still, have money thrown at them for marketing. Whether it's on the television, whether it's just talking about YouTube ads that pop up here and there, just even a nice aggressive social media campaign. Because let's be honest, if you want to promote them, you're going to pay, but getting an intern to tweet stuff out, in anticipation of a game coming out, doesn't cost that much unless you go to promote them. But yeah.
And look, there are other problems that are stated in the article. So, what they've stated is that there are other longer term problems. Lack of communication between the Evolution team and the wider Codemasters entity was also a part of this. But like you said, it doesn't take a lot of money to, start running your own Twitch channel, to have a community person who, runs content on Twitch, who puts content on social media. And if you really have a, developer, not a developer, but a publisher that has your back, maybe throw a little bit of money behind influencers, and look, I'm, again, an armchair analyst here, but I feel for these guys because it's not like they put out a bad game. I read a great article on Polygon about Splatterhouse, so Splatterhouse was a game that came out Namco many years ago, and that just sounded like a total train wreck from the developer side. But in this case, without knowing more about what happened inside those four walls, it sounded to me as though the game did fine and it did okay. There was no support behind it, and Codemasters kind of just stepped aside and said, all right, bye, guys. Enjoy. Here's your severance. Bye.
It's just it's like you say. I mean, in this day and age, just about every studio seems to, appoint a community manager well before a game comes out to engage the community in preparation for the game, to do things on social media or their official website, their forums, whatever. These are the type of people that, as you say, would reach out to content creators, influencers, review sites, and hey, look, here's a copy of our game, but without that, that seems to be a real kind of, a sign of the times where just about every major studio now seems to have a community manager for a game, prior to its release, to try to, we'll come back on that hype word again, but to actually generate interest, and if you don't have that, I mean, you end up with something like this where, they're lucky that 1,000 physical copies were bought, because they're probably people who just happen to be in the shop and go, oh, that looks cool. Oh yeah, I'll grab that.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't help. The name is generic. It had no marketing muscle behind it. From what I was able to tell, it had no marketing muscle behind it. So as a final point, I just really feel for anyone that was working for Onrush's developer Evo, and I really hope that they land Evolution Studios. I really hope they land somewhere else. And, I think all we can do is just say that, these, maybe as people that play games, we don't necessarily feel for, crunch and layoffs. And maybe it's something that we would like. It's tough. It's really tough. But I just really hope it happens less moving forward.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Another thing that's going to be moving forward this year, hopefully, is going to be the next generation of video cards for all you PC gamers out there. Now, this is labeled rumor, so, take it with a pinch of salt, but this is from our friends over at WCCF Tech. And this, of course, is to do with the highly anticipated 11 series NVIDIA graphics cards. So there's a bunch of news going around at the moment that is all rumors. If you remember, or if you've ever watched any other major tech tubers out there, there was initial speculation, we did it ourselves on Jungle Drums, that the cards were most likely going to be launched in July or August. But then as times went on, we've now seen that, well, hold on, there's really no rush for NVIDIA to come out with these cards, because they're currently I hate to say, but yes, the market leader, because their product is the highest performing one at the moment. And, pricing has now finally started to go down. Prices still aren't at MSRP, but, they're getting there. So what's quite interesting is that this rumor is about a release date, release schedule possibly being leaked. So according to the rumors, we could see possibly the next flagship, well, I say flagship, the 1180. Again, that might not be what the card's called, but potentially the 1180 in August, whereas an 1170 in September, and an 1160 possibly in October, which makes sense. This is the way the NVIDIA always tends to do it. They come out with an awesome flagship card first, then they bring out their kind of somewhat high but kind of mid-range card, a month later, and then their lower, not low end, but their mid-range, their cheaper card another month, even later. And this is what they did with the 10 series. The 1080 came out, then the 1070, then the 1060. And so what's quite interesting is, because of the potential performance increase here, there's been some leaked benchmarks, which very well could be fake, but what we're looking at from the 1170, which I'm sure is what the sample was, I think it was an 1170, was ridiculous performance, actually outperforming a current 1080 Ti, and 16 gigabytes of RAM, video memory, GDDR6 on it. But anyway, it's pretty exciting, because whenever, we've had the 10 series of cards now for quite some time. And the beauty of when this next generation comes, with any luck, it'll push prices down of the current gen, which would be a really, really good thing. Because if you look at the past way video cards have worked, like before the 10 series, right? If you had a 980 Ti, a 1080 technically didn't perform any better than that. When NVIDIA finally came out with the 1080 Ti, then yes, that blew the 9 series away. But, this is always kind of the boat we're in. And so logic would suggest that the 1180, if that's what it ends up being called, shouldn't necessarily outperform the 1080 Ti. But the leaked benchmarks we're seeing are saying a totally different story. That potentially this next generation could blow everything out the water. Which, I don't know. I mean, it'll probably be the usual 20-25% performance increase. But what it means, though, for anyone who's in the market for buying hardware at the moment, now's a really, really tricky time if you want to buy a video card. Because, new stuff's just on the horizon, and if it is amazing, I mean, potentially, if you wait a few months, that 1160 could potentially be better than a video card that at the moment costs $800. And that one's going to cost, say, $300. We don't know yet. We don't know.
Now, perhaps you can illuminate me here, because I'm someone who has I've built my own computer, my own PC, I believe once or twice, or at least built it once, upgraded it twice. I don't have the most knowledge. Right now, I'm rocking a 760, so I'll tell you, I'm definitely with the times. But I want to ask you, this generation, the 10 series, has been quite the tumultuous one, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's been it's than normal because of cryptocurrency, right? Correct?
Yes. I mean, it's a combination of that, but also what AMD had to offer. Because in the past, AMD, and even before it was AMD, it was Radeon before they'd bought them out. But there used to be this type of cycle where they would constantly leapfrog. Nvidia would release a card that was the best thing since sliced bread. Then AMD would release a card that would just slightly edge it out. And this is what they did, back and forth, back and forth. And this continued all the way up to the 9 series, where now a 980 Ti was hard to, compete with that, but some of the big burly AMD cards, like the 390 XX or something, that came pretty darn close. So there was always this healthy competition. So as long as there was that healthy competition, the release of new video cards and new technology was coming at a really, really nice pace. So when the 10 series was being developed, this is when AMD was working on its next generation of video card, because their latest ones, which were the R9 Fury and the R9 Nano, were super ridiculously expensive. And yes, they performed well, but not as much as people would have hoped. But then there was these rumors of AMD's next thing, and holy crap, this is going to be amazing. This is going to be amazing. And so that's when Nvidia was like, okay, right, so we're coming out with the 10 series, and the 10 series is going to be, super amazing. And they came out with the 1080, and yeah, fabulous card. It was about on par with a 980 Ti, but in some things it was better, and other things it wasn't. And then likewise, the 1070, really, really cool card, and the 1060, which funnily enough, I have a 1060. And for 1080p gaming, that's all you really need. This is the thing about video cards. I mean, you can go buy the best that money can buy, but if you've got a monitor that's got a 60 hertz refresh rate and a 1080p resolution, anything more expensive than a 1060 is just a waste of money. Now, on the other hand, if you've got one of those crazy 240 hertz refresh rate monitors, these super gamer FPS, monitors, then okay, yeah, one of the top end cards is going to benefit you. Or likewise, if you have a higher resolution monitor, what is kind of known as 2K, but most of us, we refer to as 1440p, a 1060, my card would struggle with that. But a 1070 would perform really, really well, provided we're talking about a low refresh rate. If we're going to if you had a 1440p monitor that has, say, a 144 hertz refresh rate, then okay, the 1070 should do you just okay. But in some AAA games at higher quality settings, you're going to need a 1080 or a 1080 Ti.
Right.
And then when you get in a world of 4K gaming, a single 1080 Ti, which I don't know what the current prices of those are, and over here it's expensive, but a 1080 Ti on its own doesn't push 4K 60 frames per second with max quality settings in most games. You need 2 of them in SLI. Right? So this is the thing when you get into video cards. It's all about resolution and also your frame rate. So, as I say, I have 1080p 60 hertz panels, so anything more than a 1060 is just stupid for me. But the next monitor I'm buying, I'm actually going to buy an ultra widescreen that's 1440p with 100 hertz. Yep. So for that, yes, I need more power. So this is what happened with the video card scene, where basically AMD was supposed to be coming out with these new cards, and they were going to be awesome. So Nvidia, they're like, well, okay, they've got the 1080, they've got the 1070, they've got the 1060. So the first card to come out was this RX 480, which was supposed to blow the 1060 out the water, and it didn't. It kind of did in some things, but in others it didn't.
Okay.
But for cryptocurrency, that RX 480 from AMD was amazing. Super efficient, really did a good job. So they sold out. You couldn't buy one anywhere. To put this into perspective, I pre-ordered an RX 480. And then my kind of local, Overclockers UK, they actually contacted me. And they said, look, we've got a supply issue. You won't be able to get that card. So I, at the last minute, said, oh, well, a 1060 is the same price. Can I just get that? Because that was launching the same day. And they're like, yeah, that's no problem. Yeah, we'll send you one of those. But so anyway, that didn't perform. So there was nothing really to worry about until these new cards were coming, and these were the Vegas. The Vegas were going to be using a completely different type of memory, one that's called HBM. And so, like, typical memory is kind of, it looks like what you imagine, the old school ROM chips, right? The little things that look like caterpillars or something, right? Where they're soldered into the board. Whereas HBM isn't like that. HBM is a completely different array. It's much more efficient, but also much more expensive. And so these cards were going to feature that. So wow, people, a lot of folk, they're paying attention to these cards. These are going to be amazing. And the concept was the 1080 Ti had came out, which, ridiculous card. Amazing performance. Not as good as their Titan series, which is on a completely different level. But most gamers don't talk about those because that's a card that its MSRP is $1,200. Never mind what they actually sell for. So most gamers don't go for the Titans. They're way out of their league. But anyway, so the Vega cards were upcoming, and it was speculated that the Vega 64 was going to wipe the floor with the 1080 Ti. And people were just patiently waiting. When Vega finally came out, they came out with two models, the 56 and the 64. The 56 in some games performed better than a 1070, and in others didn't. But the 56, because of the supply or the demand due to cryptocurrency mining, the 56 was priced, and this isn't the MSRP, this is just what actually the price that stores were asking for it, was more than a 1080.
Boy.
And then the Vega 64, which barely performed on par with a 1080, never mind the Ti, was actually more expensive than the 1080 Ti. Because it was super good for cryptocurrency. So we had this really, really weird, it was a shame. Like, AMD fans around the world were, just anticipating the release of these Vega cards. And they just didn't quite deliver the goods. Now, they're still awesome cards, right? They perform really, really well. But because of the numbers, they didn't knock the 1080 Ti off its pedestal. So that's what created this weird sense of AMD took their best shot and they failed. So if you're Nvidia, are you in any rush to come out with your next card? Because there's no reason to. If AMD had eclipsed them in performance, then yes, their hand would have been forced. We would have seen this new generation much sooner. But they've been basically king of the hill. So we're completely at Nvidia's leisure. They're just sitting back, smoking cigarettes and what do you think? Should we do it now?
Well, even the article states, and take this with a grain of salt because this article is based off a piece of information that was obtained by WCCF Tech. But what it says in there is that they had an overabundance of unsold and unfinished cards, so they delayed the 11 series, which to me is exactly what you've stated, which is I don't want to call them sitting on their laurels and smoking a fat cigar on their gold encrusted desks, but they had the time and they took a little bit of extra time to see that they sold through that inventory because, as you've said, prices bottom out on the 10 series. They won't bottom out, but they'll definitely drop when the 11 series cards come out.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. What happened? The overstock, that's a fact. That is actually what has happened, and that has been due to the decline in cryptocurrency. I mean, you go back, like last year, if you and I say we had a little bit of money, I say a little bit, like if we had a few grand to invest in a mining system, we could say if you spent $5 or $6 grand like last year, you would have seen a return on that investment within 5 to 6 months, and then you would have started going into profit, depending on the currency you chose. But fast forward to now, and there's barely any money in mining itself, especially for like just an end user like me and you. The best we could do is maybe like we could each talk to our partners and maybe be able to get a closet or a room, right, where we could have a mining machine that has like maybe 10 video cards in it. But there's almost no money in that anymore.
Right.
Now it's all about these warehouses. I mean, we're talking warehouses. Imagine if Best Buy, your local Best Buy, was nothing but racks of mining machines, each machine, having, say, about 12 video cards in it, right? Stacked, say, 10, 15, 20 high, and just running 24/7. Because of the way that the nature of the beast is now, with different countries and placing different types of legislation, enforcement restrictions, it's really hard to make it. You can still flip it. So if you want to invest, purchase, play the market just like stocks, there's money in that for you, but not for mining itself. So what ended up happening, all of these warehouses, especially in Asia, they bought up all the stock. That's why us gamers couldn't get a hold of these cards. Or when we did, we were paying like triple what, at least double what they were supposed to be priced. So in response, NVIDIA and AMD, and give them credit, they're like, okay, well, right, we need to build more to actually meet demand of the gamers. But they got their timing off, because now there's this huge decline in mining. So, yeah, sure enough, they've got... I did this, it was a few episodes back, I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but it was like crazy, like a crazy amount of these current generation video cards that they have to, try to get rid of. So it does make sense. You wouldn't, look at a car dealership. What do they do when that next year's models are coming in and they've still got a parking lot full of this year's, cars? You come in and you want to order next year's? Are they going to say, oh yeah, that's not a problem? Or are they going to try to sell you what they've got on the lot?
Yeah, they're for sure going to offer you the $1,000 cash back. The 5%, the terms. They're going to give you everything they can to try and get you to take an older model or last year's model off the lot. And that's I think what's going to go on here. If we need to delay it, we delay it. I had one question for you, and in the article, it stated that the 1180 will come out in August. And again, these are all rumors, but there's also the 1180 Plus.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a TI card, or do you think that's something new entirely? Because that's not nomenclature that they've usually used, right?
Yeah, it's not nomenclature that they usually use at all. That's one that I'm really not quite sure. It could be an equivalent of the TI. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of, unless we're it's if it is possibly just as the article kind of alludes to, potentially a custom board, because again with the NVIDIA cards, what always happens is NVIDIA does not allow the launch of custom cards, and by custom I mean like your Asus ROG Strix 1180 or your MSI 1180. All you can buy initially are what are called reference models. So that's like all of the 10 series cards. They have that. All the reference models have what's called a blower style cooler, which is just that thing that looks like it's the one fan on the very far right of the card. And then, the rest of it's the heatsink, which isn't a bad looking design. But in a lot of
essentially
use,
they're stock cards, right?
Yes, yeah. That's what we call it, a reference, the reference model. But yeah, it's basically they're stock. That's what they come like. But then AIBs, which were the after, the partners, they basically take the stock design, the actual circuit board itself, and go, right, now we're going to tart this thing up. We're going to use a different heatsink or put 3 fans on it, and they do their own stuff. Or if you're Asus, they put RGB on it and charge you an extra $100. It's just the nature of the beast. So with them, this is what would end up happening. Like, say if the 1180 comes out in August, all we would see would be the NVIDIA 1180 initially, and then it probably wouldn't be until September, maybe even later till we start seeing like the Asus ROG Strix 1180, so on and so forth. It happens quite often. So with that plus sign, it's an awesome question, because more likely than not, it's not a TI model, but potentially more about 1180s from third parties.
Got it.
Not directly from NVIDIA. That would be my guess. Could be wrong, but that's kind of my gut feeling with that. If there was a TI, they would definitely announce it. And to be frank, if the performance increase is what allegedly it's going to be, I mean, to put this in perspective, right? A 1080 Ti has what is it? 11 gigabytes of memory, whereas their Titan cards have 12 gigabytes. And allegedly, the 11 series is going to have 16, which is huge for a video. I mean, it's just huge for a video card. And then the performance as well, if it really, really is on par, I mean, we're looking at potentially that 1160 performing better than a 1080, and the 1170 potentially performing better than a 1080 Ti, if the rumors are to be believed. Which would mean an 1180 Ti, NVIDIA will be in no rush to release that, and if anything, they might deliberately hold off, because guess what? AMD is also working on their next generation of video cards. Release date to be determined. So they might hold on to their Ti until they see what hand AMD plays. Possibly.
Right. But I guess only time will tell, correct?
Exactly. Only time will tell. But it's a good... We're finally in a good place when it comes to hardware, because the video card prices have been horrible. It's been that RAM, even hard drives and power supplies, all of those prices have been inflated due to mining. And honestly, in the last year or two, like you've always probably heard people always say, oh, it's cheaper to build your own computer. Well, not in the last year or two. It's actually been cheaper to buy one than it has been to build it. Because, think about it. Especially in the high end, at least, if you wanted a brand new i7 8700K with a 1080 Ti, if you and I were to build that, we're subject to market pricing and the supply and demand economy. Whereas if you ordered a computer, say, from Origin with that spec, they aren't affected by those prices. They buy in bulk, and they buy at the vendor flat pricing. Supply and demand doesn't mean NVIDIA goes, well, you know what, Origin, we're going to start charging you $200 more. It doesn't work that way. It's been the resellers that have been, pushing the price, taking advantage of that. But most system builders haven't. So the last year or two, for a high-end gaming system, as much as it pains me to say, it's been cheaper to buy one than it has been to build one.
And like I said, I've been holding on to a 760 forever. I've upgraded almost every other piece of my PC, like new motherboard, new processor, threw some new RAM in there to be compatible with my motherboard, and I've just not touched the video card. So I'm very excited to see not only what the 11 series cards can do, but more importantly for me, who I don't want to say I'm on a budget, but like I'm not going to get I have a podcast about old games, so I don't need the brand new video card, right? So I'm very excited to see what that does to 10 series cards as well.
What kind of monitor do you have, just out of curiosity? Is it a conventional, like, 1080p, or you got a higher resolution?
No, I have a 1080p monitor. It's a stock. It's not a stock, but it's an Elite Display E222 from HP. It's a very stock monitor. I don't even know if it does 1080p. I'm going to find out right now. Because
that'll be the thing. I mean, you're probably, this is like for you, depending on which route you go. Like, say, for example, you treat yourself and you end up getting, say, a bigger monitor of some kind, or you want to get like one of these super ultra wides or something. Mm-hmm. One of the neatest things about that is some of the technology. So, like, FreeSync is great. FreeSync is fabulous, but that's an AMD technology, whereas G-Sync's the NVIDIA version. Now, the problem is, the same monitors, if they were identical, except for one having G-Sync and one having FreeSync, the G-Sync monitor is going to be 35% pricier, right? And it's a shame because now the whole concept of these technologies is like, say if your panel is 60 hertz, but this is why if you're playing a game but it doesn't hit 60 FPS, it'll start to look choppy and nasty because your panel, if you're not at the actual refresh rate of the panel, if you're lower than it, it looks like crap. And so what G-Sync and FreeSync do, they actually stop that from happening because at hardware level, it syncs the monitor to the video card. So if you've got FreeSync or G-Sync and say your frames dip to 40, you won't actually see that much of a difference on screen. You won't be able to tell that difference.
Right.
So, for example, if you bought yourself a decent monitor but it's got FreeSync, some of the AMD cards will probably be actually really good for you. Like an RX 580, the prices of those have came way down. And those are really, really good performing cards. Because that's the problem with NVIDIA. NVIDIA cards are great and they perform better, but they really, if you really want the best performance of them, you need to pair up with a G-Sync monitor. In those events, if we're talking about, going lower. If you've got a crazy NVIDIA card, that's putting out hundreds of frames per second, the point is moot. But, if we're thinking that if you're like on a budget, for example, and you can't buy the best all singing, all dancing video card, one of those RXs on the AMD side teamed up with a FreeSync monitor is actually a really good kind of cheaper option, but it'll give you the performance. The 580 actually is a really good performing card.
So I think between the lines, what you're telling me is that as soon as the point where I'm ready to buy a new video card and potentially a new monitor, I should send you a DM, right? That's what you're saying.
Potentially. I mean, the thing is, it's like you say, it's about budget.
Right.
And it's one of those things, where if I'm a big believer of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So if it does what you need it to do, then there's no reason to upgrade. But if you are now playing a game where now you start having to turn down the settings like to the point where the game looks horrible, then okay, yeah, it's time to look at an upgrade. But if you're not there yet, then it's fine. There's no rush. You can just wait out the storm and see what the hell happens.
Yeah, I think that's probably what I'm going to do. As someone who tends to play more indie games on his PC, and then play kind of your bigger games or your quote-unquote AAA games on a console on my TV, I think for me, it's like you've said, it's all about budget. It's all about thinking about your needs. And look, if I'm going to play Beat Cop on my PC, it's not a graphically intensive game. So apart from upgrading my video card to, I'm now 4 generations behind, getting a video card that is in the now, I think maybe that's really all I need based on the monitor that I have, unless I do want to make an investment further. Absolutely.
Well, that was our last bit of news. We've been chatting for a while. It's been. Keep in mind, we actually before we started recording, we chatted for about an hour. We've
talked so much tonight.
We are now actually just tired of each other's voices. I'm never going to listen to another podcast of his ever again. No, just kidding. Of course,
I'm never going to listen to you again.
Course. Joking aside, though, Jacob, it was absolutely fantastic to have you on the show. Very, very enjoyed your company, good sir, and you're always welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much, and I really enjoyed my time. Thanks so much.
Not a problem. Look, folks, that is going to do it for this week's episode of Jungle Drums. But as always, make sure to check out the rest of scholarlygamers.com. We've got reviews, there's news, there's articles, there's other video content. In fact, just this week, my new series, the next iteration of Fundamentals is launching, and of course that is PC Building Fundamentals. So the first episode is just a prologue. It's just me actually sitting on my couch, having a chat, talking about what I hope to do with the show, whilst also explaining why the series has been delayed for so many weeks. In addition to that, we've got great other content as well. Proof of Console from Captain McMuffin, fabulous show, check it out if you haven't already. And of course, Armchair Gaming from The Unbearable Gamer. If over the weekend you find yourself needing something to watch, then hey look, all you have to do is fire up Twitch. Use the hashtag ScholarlyGamers, or just go straight to the Scholarly Gamers community and you can see who is streaming. In fact, from the website itself on Scholarly Gamers, you can go to the streaming community and see just at a glance, without even opening Twitch up, who is streaming right then and there, because I can guarantee that over the weekend there will be someone streaming. And of course, if you haven't already subscribed to the Left Behind Game Club podcast, then you're living your life wrong. There's something wrong with you. Check it out. Go to the website. Go to whatever type your phone you have. If you're folk like us with the Apples, you know how easy it is to subscribe to a podcast. Just get it done. I'm sure it's just as easy on Android as well. But hey, check out the site, and as Jacob said, they've got a Discord that I am definitely going to be joining myself, because it just, from what I understand, it seems like there's some really good conversations going on there. And I'm assuming you guys also, like, after an episode, is there discussion there where, maybe folk are giving feedback or asking additional questions or anything like that? Or
Yeah, so it's actually funny that you mentioned that. So right now we're playing Hitman. We're splitting up our series into 7 or 8 different episodes. We just don't know if we're going to make the bonus content its own thing yet. Anyway, and what happened after the fact is one of our community members actually went on the site or went on the Discord, and Mike, the man with the silky smooth voice, made a comment about running around the first level while he was figuring out how to play the game, picturing himself listening to Benny Hill music.
Yeah.
And what was cool is one of our community members actually made this video of reenactment in the game of what Michael had been going through, set to Benny Hill music. So today I got quite the shock at work when I opened my phone and this community member, Hackham, had gone in there and basically recreated Mike's movements in the game and put it to Benny Hill music. It was just the best. So like I've said, if you're interested in kind of older titles, there's some great subreddits out there. There's some great Discord communities. Consider adding the Left Behind Game Club to that repertoire.
Excellent. There you go. One last plug. Look, that's it. We're out, folks. We will catch you again next week. In the meantime, take it easy and be safe. Catch you later.